first of all, Benjamin, congratulations on an amazing film. It's a very accomplished piece of filmmaking. And for me, it's actually really hard to believe that this is only your second feature-length documentary. It's just amazing. So big congratulations for that. First of all, a very fundamental question about the film. You have absolutely amazing access from a very early period in the story. And I wondered if you knew Barbara, the painter, before you started making the film.
Thank you for those kind words. Actually, I found this story reading the news in Norway. So I was researching art robberies. I think I just did it for fun. I think art robberies are very fascinating. You have the kind of high culture art world and then low culture robbers. And those contrasts fascinated me. And on the front newspapers, in the major papers in Norway, this story was presented to me. So I contacted Barbara after the trial and got access to begin filming them after they had met about 4 times. And I was fortunate enough to have a lot of archival footage before I came along. So a friend of Barbara had filmed her, documenting her paintings being made, her exhibitions. We had the surveillance footage from the robbery. We even had recordings from the trial. So I came in very early, and I began filming this as a short documentary. You know, with a film like this, I didn't know anything what would happen. Like, it was a big risk to take. I thought that the premise was really fascinating, with that Barbara, the painter, had approached her thief and asked if she could paint him. But I was planning on doing kind of a 10-minute short documentary. And then the project just grew and grew over time. And I think that the scene you see in the film where Karl-Bertil sees himself painted for the first time, that was when I began realizing that this is something bigger than just a short documentary.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, you talk about getting the footage. So obviously there was a level of trust between you and Barbara at an early stage. How did you get the trust of Barbara's partner, and also Karl-Bertil as well, and his partner, because their worlds are so different?
With this film, I've had many conversations about dramaturgy, and I think that is one of the reasons why I get access. Hopefully, I'm a trustworthy person, but I think that I talk a lot about how we're going to portray a person, about storytelling, and that includes both Karl-Bertil and Øystein into the filmmaking. I think including the subjects that way is important, also because it's an ethical decision, because then they can contact me, calling me up saying, this is going to happen, I want you to be there with a camera. So this is what happens most of the time. They are calling me. We meet up a lot and we talk about life. And then they call me, and Karl-Bertil called me and said, I'm going to rehab. I think you should come along and film this. And the reason why he called me for that is because we have talked a lot about, we want to show the ugly truth of drugs. So we talked a lot about storytelling, how to present themes and get kind of complex character studies, subject studies. So I think that's one of the reasons why I get access. And I think everyone thought that this story was so incredible, so they wanted to be a part of it.
And you shot most of the footage yourself. You shared the director of photography duties with a colleague, Christopher Kumar. So for example, when you were called and you were told that something was going to happen, would you turn up maybe a couple of hours in advance and just set up in the corner, or was it different each day? Was it different with each different circumstance that you were recording?
So what you don't see is a lot of waiting. I think sometimes I feel like I'm a kind of BBC wildlife documentary filmmaker because
Yes.
I need to wait a lot. So sometimes they wouldn't show up. Sometimes I have to wait for 5 hours, and sometimes I just have to get the phone call and then just go there immediately. So, for example, after the car crash.
Yes. Yeah.
So it all depends on what's happening. But I think that it all comes from the motivations from the people I film. I think it's so crucial because I can talk as much as I want to try to convince people to be a part of scenes and show parts of their lives. I think most of the time I won't get good scenes then. It's much better if they contact me. It's much better that we have kind of talks around what we want to do with the film, that it's a collaborative process. And what I often talk about with them is that dramaturgy is not only kind of an artistic choice, it's also an ethical choice, ethical decision. And they care about how they will be presented. And they also see the value of showing their weakness, showing that they have trouble. And I think that talking a lot about these things has given me a lot of access during the filming period, which took part over a 3-year period.
You said that they would often call you and you would turn up with the camera. Was anything off limits, or were you just allowed to record whatever happened? For example, we don't see drug taking, but we see the effects of drugs.
So, for example, that scene when I filmed Carl Bertil on the way to rehab, he buys heroin, and his girlfriend at that time takes it away from him, and he begs to get it back before going into rehab. The day after we filmed that scene, Bertil called me up and he said, please, Benjamin, you can't use that in the film. You can't use this scene. It's too personal. I was on drugs. And I told Bertil, I respect that. I will not use that in the film. I think it's completely different ethical territory when you film something that's on drugs.
Yeah.
And I said, I will not use it in the film. And the next day after that, again, Bertil called me back and said, you have to use it in the film. It's so important. And he wanted to remove some stigmas about being a drug addict. He also wanted to show the ugly truth. What happens when the party is over? And I haven't seen that before in films, or at least not in documentary films in this way. Many times drugs are kind of portrayed in a kind of a bit glorified way, and this is something we talk about a lot. We are having lunch and talk about this stuff, what we want to get across to the audience, and that I think motivated him a lot as well. So there were, of course, sometimes they called me up and said that you can't use that scene. But I think that since I then told them that I'm fine with that, I'm not going to include it, they called me back and said, you have to include it. So I think that kind of trust, I think because I said I will remove it, I think that's also the reason why they called me up and said, you have to use it.
That's fascinating. Wow. One of the many things that I like about your film is the plotting. There's a great sense of tension and drama. And although you had a really great story, obviously documentaries don't tell themselves, however great the story is. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you planned and edited the film and how you created the mood and tension throughout.
So I wanted from the start to follow both of them, both the artist and the muse and the thief. And I think that there's been a lot of films about an artist and the muse, and then usually the artist is male.
Yep.
I think it was great here to have an artist that's female. Mm-hmm. And I think that usually in those films also you see the perspectives of the artist. And I wanted to kind of break that norm. That was a lot of fun. And I think that the idea came while interviewing Bertil, where he just told me she sees me very well, but she forgets that I see her as well. So that's a crucial point in the film, but also during the filming process. And to get a bit back to why I think dramaturgy is not only artistic choices, but it's also an ethical choice in documentaries, because you are going to portray real people. And I wanted to get across what an intelligent, charismatic, funny, but also very dark person with a lot of sorrow Karl Bertil is. And the only way to do that was to see it from his point of view. And the themes, for me, this film is exploring the themes of what we humans do in order to be seen and appreciated, and what it takes of us to see others and help others. And I thought that with shifting perspectives and also jumping back and forth in time, we would explore those themes with much more complexity. Mm-hmm. Because then we see the world from both of their point of views, but with overlapping scenes. So that's also one reason that we included it, because I think that we get we get deeper into how we explore the themes of the film.
And did you have like traditional storyboards as well?
I think it's kind of some scenes you can't plan. For example, when Karl Bertil begins crying, that's an example of a scene that we waited for 5 hours. We were gonna film something different, and then this just happened. And then you have to kind of the filming of this is kind of a dance with the subjects, and you have one chance. I think that it's easy to forget that you have one chance to get it right. If you fuck up with focus or with the framing, the subtext of the scene will be completely different. But other scenes we can plan better. For example, Bertil in prison. And then I think a lot about references. And I'm a huge film geek. So I watch a lot of films and I have a lot of references. So for example, that scene is very much inspired by Sam Peckinpah's The Getaway. And then we talk about like what an image how can an image express the inner life of Karl Bertil? Maybe a really wide shot expresses more about loneliness than a close-up. And this is also a technique I've used in this film. I do a lot of interviews in the film, but I don't use it in the actual film, because I think my job is to convert those interviews into a cinematic language. And for example, to take the prison scenes again as an example, I interview Bertil a lot, and he talks about the repetitiveness of being in prison, the loneliness, the isolation. I have never been in prison before, but I have experienced similar feelings. And as a director, my job is to convert those emotions to find a form that expresses his inner life with the cinematic language. I think that the spoken words in interviews, that's a language for another form than the film medium. And kind of the opening sentences of Vertov's The Man with the Movie Camera, where he expresses what the cinematic language is, and that he's going to explore that to find something that's not theater or a written text. It's something specific for the film language. That is something that I've been very inspired by in this film also, to find the cinematic language to express the inner life of the people I film.
Thank you very much. That's a wonderful answer, and really gives such an unusual insight into the creative process. And I find it fascinating as well that you said that you were influenced by fiction films as well, particularly The Getaway. And you're right, you know, that whole prison drama genre has certain, I think in cine literate audiences, certainly, you build up certain expectations about what you're going to see, how somebody is going to be, and how they're going to talk. But there was just something so unusual about his prison experience as well. It was as if he turned into a different man, and even within the frame, he suddenly became such a larger, stronger person on the outside. And although your camera shows the development of the muscles and the way that it looks like he kind of grows up, doesn't it, on the outside, but he's still so sensitive, and the continual phone calls to Barbara and everything. I mean, it's heartbreaking. And at that point, you know, you really do see just what a damaged soul he is, and how vulnerable he is too. It does appear like he goes on the longest journey of self-discovery and change, and it's a very visible journey as well. But I think for Barbara, her struggle and her journey is perhaps a little bit more internal. But for me, things really changed for her when she got her painting back, and that seemed to release something in her. Although I must say, I found it really tense when she went into the lockup, and I was really worried that something was going to happen then, different to what did actually happen. I wondered, was there any comeback from that? Because you clearly show that she goes in and gets it, and she now has it back.
I think we were so eager to find the painting, and I'm glad I didn't tell my mother where I was going.
Yeah.
Before we went there. It's a very dangerous place. It's probably the most dangerous place in Oslo. And what surprised me was that she so much wanted her painting back, so she broke up every cellar door. And sometimes there's dead people there, sometimes there's a lot of drugs there, so it's a very dangerous place. And yeah, it was I'm glad that we filmed everything, because it's, of course, she found the paintings in the kind of upstairs at the loft, with the door being open. It wasn't a lock on it even, it was just standing there. But it was dangerous, and she surprised me with just kind of opening all these doors. But we got a great scene though. I think it was a surreal moment, and what we didn't show there afterwards, which was a very fun scene, which is a deleted scene, is that she had to deliver the painting back to the police. So just imagine her getting back to the police, trying to explain the story. Yeah. You know, I have a painting here. A thief stole it from me. I befriended the thief, and he didn't know where it was, and it took kind of 3 years before I found it again, and I stole it back. So it was, the police was just, they did almost not believe the story, but it was a really fun moment, and it was most exciting filming period I've ever been on.
Absolutely. I think if you wrote that in a fiction feature, people would say, oh, incredible, that would never happen. And that is, you know, that's just the beauty, isn't it, of the situation that you were in. I'm looking at the time, and I think we have to wrap it up now. So there's a few thank yous that I want to say. I want to say thank you to the audience for joining us online for the Q&A. Thanks also to the UK distributor of your film, Dogwoof, who will be releasing it in cinemas on the 30th of October in the UK. Thank you to Outlook Film Sales and the Norwegian Film Institute. But most of all, thank you so much, Benjamin, for sharing your film with us and being here for the Q&A.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a privilege, really. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye for now.